everyone an apology, as I may have created some confusion. Number one, it was my belief that the board requested us to bring the ICTC to come in and to speak about their budget, which they'll do so this evening. Is it very soon? Yes. Does it need to be done immediately? No. So let me be clear on a couple of things. The board can hear from the ICTC tonight and then save the vote on it the following week if they so choose. But I'm the one that made them come in because I thought this is something that we wanted to get done. And I apologize for any confusion under that item. As you know, this wasn't a regular scheduled meeting, but I thought I'd take advantage of that time we have to have some discussion with the ICTC when they're here about their budget, the increase that they have allocated, and Jared can speak to it as he met with the other business managers and the ICTC about their budget as well. Uta and myself were a part of the GOC meetings where these were discussed, these were brought up, and again, the next step is to bring it to our board, which we have happening here tonight at 7 o'clock, and the board can decide if they want to take any further action or wait till the following week. Mr. McDermott and I believe Rachel from the business office will be present. Ms. Lowry, Mr. Cronauer, is there anything you'd like to add to the folks watching this evening regarding that item?
No, I think you covered it. Thank you.
Okay. Jared, you're good?
Yeah, I'm good too.
Okay. Moving on, if it's okay with you, Mr. Harley.
I'll tell you what, you keep moving on. I'll object when you're going too fast.
Okay, fair enough. Fair.
But turning off and on the microphone's taking too much time.
Fair enough. Number 2 on our agenda item tonight, we are seeking permission from the board to apply for a PDE equity grant. So as a result of the school closure, the Pennsylvania Department of Education has come down with about $5 million available to all school districts in the Commonwealth. That is based on need. I included the guidelines for you. The window just opened today, and it closes, I want to say Friday, but I almost want to say Thursday. We're at a point in a position where we're going to apply for 300 Chromebooks, and let me explain how we got to that number, and then I'll ask Justin, or Mr. Zahorchak, Mr. Heinrich, and Mr. O'Neill to add to this. It's an equity grant, so what the state is saying is, look, what type of barriers are you having in regards to getting kids the equipment they need during this closure? As you know, we spend a great deal of time making surveys available to staff and providing equipment to those in need. At this point, we're well over the 160, 180 mark, and we could fast approach the 200 mark and even more. Randy will give you the exact numbers, but here's our thought, here's our perspective on it. We had a substantial change in demographics since the last decade in free and reduced lunch and the needs that come along with that. We're going to submit our grant trying to replace 300 plus Chromebooks that we have or will give out over the time of the closure. We think this is a real issue of equity. We think this closure brings to light some of the issues with kids not having internet access at home and or a reliable computer. So we have done our part as a district to provide that, to make them readily accessible. We did that in 2 waves, but right now there is a great demand for these Chromebooks, and we're vastly depleting the stockpile that we have. These are classroom sets that now we're giving out to kids. Because as a board and administration, we thought this is the right thing to do to keep kids moving forward in our continuity of educational plan. But this opportunity, we'd like permission again to apply for it. We think it makes sense for us, and we think we have a chance to get some additional Chromebook in case those needs arise or continue to grow, as we think they could. For example, when we did the first wave, we think we had about 100 or so people saying they wanted a Chromebook. Now that number has even grown beyond that. So there is need definitely in our community. Before we turn it over to the committee for discussion, Mr. Heinrich, Mr. Zahorchak, and Mr. O'Neill, anything you'd like to add about the input and thought behind us seeking permission for this grant?
That summed it up pretty well for me, Mr. Vukovic.
Okay, Rob, Mr. Zahorchak, I'm sorry, I'm flipping back between the agenda and my screen. I see Rob shaking his head. And Justin, is there anything you want to add to it from your purview?
Yeah, just as far as the equity grants go, we're seeking out 320 Chromebooks, and in a district where the poverty rate is about 40%, I think that's a fair estimate of around what we need, and with Randy's input, So this grant will go out by the end of the day on Friday, and knowing that, the only thing that I would need is just a letter of support from school board president and Mr. Vukovic. And once those are ready to go, I think the grant is pretty close already, even though it's only been released about a few hours ago. We're pretty close. So we'll submit that on Friday. And thanks.
So at this time, Mr. Harley, I'll turn it over to the committee to make sure we have support moving forward. Again, our window's very quick. So if the committee's okay with it, Mr. Schroth, we'd have to write a letter tonight or tomorrow. I can bring it by your office to get a signature. And that way Justin has what he needs, as the window is very small. Now, I kind of want to put some caution to the committee. I don't know how realistic it is we'll get anything. When you're talking about only $5 million going across all 500 school districts, I don't know what portion we're going to go with. That's why we thought to be kind of somewhat conservative in our request, but also be aligned to our needs. And those are numbers that we know we need. That's the amount of need that's been there. So we think it's aligned to where we're actually at. So Mr. Harley and committee, I'll defer to you.
Mike, first question would be, how did you arrive at 320 Chromebooks? And if I remember right, these are less than $200 each. Is that true still?
Randy can give you a number. I think you're right on, sir. I think you're around $200, maybe 250. Randy can clarify that. But when you say, how did we get to that number, sir? We just based it on the number of parents who participated in our surveys saying, look, I want a laptop. Look, I need an extra device. So that's what we based it upon. And that somewhat could be misleading. For example, you could have two parents working remotely, working at home, but since they're working all day at home, they need their computer. So we allow parents to submit for that as well. So Randy could talk about how they're prioritizing, which they are. So it's need-based, and the kids in the most need get it. Because we're telling the administration, like you told me, if we really value equity, then let's put equity at the heart of it. So we allow anyone to submit a request, and then we go through, Randy and his team go through and bases it on need. So need gets it first, meaning the kids in dire situations or with a lack of anything get it first. And then whatever we could do from there, we're doing that. Randy, you want to clarify that and the cost?
Well, yeah, we are looking at around $350 a piece, and that's with licensing, or I'm sorry, $250 a piece, and that's with licensing and stuff like that. So, but yeah, we at this point, when we've been able to fill all the requests, the second wave of Chromebook requests ended this past Sunday in the evening, and we have all those requests filled, and we have about 40 left over that we're going to work with the guidance counselors now for some of the things that have been coming in a little later. The window to fill out that form has been open for about 10 days, so. We were able to fill a lot of need up to this point, but I think with the ones that we still currently have, we want to make sure that they absolutely 100% get to the kids that they need them. So the guidance counselors are going to help us kind of fill out the rest of them. We're not going to open up the form again to the general public. We're going to open it to the guidance counselors and principals, and they're going to help my department fill the need as best we can. So the 320 number is probably going to be pretty close to what we are lending out. So at this point, what we've lended out are Chromebooks from last year's seniors that didn't purchase them, so we were able to recover those, and then Chromebook carts that there's no completely non-essential cart that's out anywhere, but they were in maybe some spots that if we suddenly came back to school tomorrow or at the end of this month, teachers can still go back into their classroom and start working as if they left. We haven't started to dismantle all the Chromebooks in the classroom yet. So the 320 is pretty much about as many as we're going to probably lend out.
Okay, but from what I hear then, Randy, is that we still have Chromebooks in the classroom that we could lend out if we don't get this grant. Is that and well, actually
to get this grant, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Vukovic. I don't know that there were additional ones we were going to lend out. We were going to use those to potentially recover the ones that we currently lend out, because we're not sure of the. I mean, we do send them home with a lending agreement and different things like that, but we're just not quite sure what the condition or situation is going to be as to getting them back.
Hey, let's turn to the committee. Does the committee have any questions on this?
Yeah, my only question is, and I did not get a chance to read all the guidelines for the actual grant, but are we hearing anything about challenges in actually accessing Wi-Fi internet capability? And if we are, is that something we could add to this grant?
Yes, I don't want to speak for Justin, but yes, I think those are some allowable costs. Based on the survey we got, the information we're getting back from parents through either a survey or through email, there's been no real attention brought to us as far as accessing internet, accessing Wi-Fi. Now, I don't know if it's because they didn't respond to their survey, or maybe because they didn't have internet to even see the survey, or because maybe they don't have enough devices. But as far as my purview, have I got any complaints or concerns brought to my attention about internet access? Not at this point, I haven't. We have looked at some other plans in case we do. But Randy, have you got anything made aware of that you're made aware of at this point regarding that?
No, only from our surveys. We had several Chromebook requests that and one of the options on the lending form was, do you have internet at home? So we haven't had too many that requested a Chromebook, didn't have internet at home, but we have had a couple, but it compared to the number that we've received, it's maybe 3 or 4.
And Ms. Lowry, you bring up a good point. Some of our parents have called in and asked for either a Chromebook or asked for maybe go to a paper packet. So the numbers that we're going off are inclusive of those phone calls that the building principals or buildings may have gotten as well. But that's the only 2 mechanisms we really have: survey, and then people who may be calling in at this point in time.
Okay.
Anything else from the
I just
committee?
didn't know, if we wanted to add in just a couple of hotspots with a plan, dollars available for when you actually activate them per month. I think short-term people might be able to make do, but if this goes on for an extended period of time, it might get more challenging.
Yeah, I think you
But
bring
I
up.
would totally leave that up to you guys.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. And I think like you said, Randy and Justin, I don't think it would hurt. I'll let you guys decide that and work that out. If you want to include it, then let's do that. And we'll go from there if that's okay with the committee.
The only thing I would see with asking for hotspots, I mean, if you wanted to kind of go ahead and get them, I mean, we could ask for money for that. We would need to start identifying people as to where we're going to give them. A hotspot is only as good as the cell phone signal in the area. And
Right.
If you've driven around Indiana all that much, it doesn't take long to go down a hill and into a valley, and all of a sudden you have no signal, or maybe 1 or 2 bars. So, even if you're getting general data, 2 or 3 meg per second may not be the greatest. It may be more frustrating to do the assignments with that rather than more broadband speeds.
But Randy, if we have 20 people that need this and 10 of them can be helped by a hotspot, then we need to look into the hotspots. And you're going to have to make a decision going case by case. If they have no signal, then it doesn't make any sense. But certainly it's going to help a few of the people. And again, I'm pleased that the numbers are so small.
I agree.
Yeah, we can monitor everything, and I do have to give credit to all the principals, guidance counselors, and especially Randy's team being so responsive to the need. Knock on wood, the laptop, the Chromebook distribution went incredibly well out of the high school. He's done a nice job doing that. A lot of families are very appreciative. And I only say that because this board talks about equity and putting the needs of our kids first, and then those actions reflect such. Randy did an incredible job, and his team. He's been living out of the high school for the past couple of days getting this done. But right now, Mr. Harley, we feel in a good spot. If this committee's okay with us moving forward with that grant, we'll do so. We'll empower Randy then to advise Justin what other additional materials may be needed. But at this point, we have just a quick turnaround, so I would like permission to move forward.
Let me ask if the board members have any comments.
This is Walter. I had a couple questions. One for Randy. Number one, if we are successful in the grant and we get these 320, are you planning on retiring any of the current Chromebooks with these, or are you going to keep them all?
Well, we do have some older ones that are end of life according to Google. So we certainly could look at retiring. Although even though they're end of life with Google, that doesn't mean they're not useful. But we probably would look at retiring some of those. Yes, and those could amount to 320 if you wanted to.
Well, where I'm going with this, Randy, is when you came up with the 320, I followed your discussion that these were based on the number that you've lent out already. My question is, there's going to be some variability over time, and I'm pretty much convinced this isn't the only time we may end up having to do this. And if some of the ones that we currently have need to be retired, should we not maybe add an additional 10% on top of the 320, get another 30 or 35? Again, not trying to take unfair advantage of this, but trying to make sure that if there were fluctuations in our students, we would have sufficient quantities of these to lend out that would be in serviceable condition.
Well, do you think a higher number, Justin? Do you think a higher number would be to detriment to the grant? I think that's kind of why we came up with the 320 as well.
Yeah, and that's what I thought too. I thought the 320 was a little bit of a, right now, I don't know what the total number is that you gave out thus far, but I think 320 gives us a little bit of a cushion area there. I mean, could that cushion area be higher? Yeah, I think it could, but we also want to make sure that, we give ourselves a good shot at this grant, just because, there's going to be schools that are applying for this that have much higher rates of economically disadvantaged students, and so you almost have to weigh out like the amount with how much money that you could potentially get back, considering that there's going to be a bunch of schools out there applying for a lot of money. You just have to be careful.
Gentlemen, I think we can move ahead with this.
May I make a suggestion? Even if we don't get the grant, the fact that the Chromebook costs only $250, there are probably some parents who would be willing to purchase some Chromebooks and give the school's Chromebooks back. Go ahead and purchase their Chromebooks for their kids to keep throughout the rest of the school year, and keep it after they graduate, and give back the ones that have already been issued. Do you know am I clear on that?
Well, yeah. We're not really having an issue with grades 9 through 12 because they're take home 1-to-1 already. So really to have a Chromebook outside 9th grade, like before 9th grade, and use that all through, that may be pushing the length or lifespan of a Chromebook. But our grades 9 through 12, they all have them, and they'll have the opportunity to purchase them outright at the end. That we do an insure to own. So they'll have the ability to purchase it outright when they graduate as well. All the numbers that we're talking about right now are pretty much pre-K through 8, because 9 through 12 they took theirs home with them. They all have them.
Gentlemen, let's move on this. The committee will support it. Getting into the weeds with this, we're unlikely to get anything, let alone more than we're asking for $80,000. They've woefully underfunded this request across the state. So let's go ahead and move on. We'll support the. I normally look around and see if everybody's shaking their head, but my guess is we'll support this at the committee at the meeting tonight. So can we move on?
Sounds good to me, sir.
Okay.
Moving on, if it's okay, Mr. Hurley, I want to give a little background here. Number 3, I'm asking for permission for Greg Lozanik and his team to look at some grant opportunities for the replacement of the turf and field. A couple things here. One, let me be clear with everyone. Am I asking us to replace the turf this year? I'm absolutely not. What I'm recommending is we just monitor situations, see where we go, see the impact this pandemic has had on our county and on our state, and see what happens as we go forward. Now, during that time, you know very clearly we passed a law that no one is allowed to lose money. In fact, they get paid during the closure, and the governor signed that bill. As such, we have 3 athletic directors who are sitting at home, and they're not able to be athletic directors because they're not going to events. We're not having events. So Greg said, look, Mike, during this shutdown, would you like me to pursue? He sent me some information about a grant, and then subsequently Utah sent me 2 more that are out there. I don't know if we're going to get them. And this grant is not reflective of us replacing anything. It's reflective of the simple fact that there may be grants out there, and would like the committee decide if you want him to go forward with it or not. He brought it to my attention. I followed our protocol that we have in place. My 2 years here is vetting everything through a committee meeting, and I brought Greg online. So before there's any questions, I wanted to give you that background. And if it's okay with you, Mr. Harley, turn it over to Greg. He can maybe go a little bit more detail about these grants, as I have not looked at them, as my team will not look at them right now because we're handling an entire shutdown and pandemic that we want to focus on. But Greg, is there any insight or thought behind why you asked for this? Or about
Mike, before you move on to Greg, the turf we've known for a while has a limited lifespan. It won't all wear out at once, but there will be problems with it at some point. We've extended its life by doing some repair work early, but it's definitely on. We can see the end of its life coming up. So that is something that the board has certainly the Buildings and Grounds and the extracurricular has been paying attention to over the last few years. So Greg, go ahead and tell us about the possibilities here.
Well, thanks, Mr. Harley, Mr. Vukovic. I was talking to Coach Overdorf, and he brought up this USA football grant. And then talking to or emailing with Mr. Vukovic and Ms. Lowry, a couple grants out there maybe for soccer that could kick in. I met virtually this afternoon with the athletic directors, and we talked about it, we discussed it. Like Mr. Vukovic said, I don't know exactly what's out there. I have zero experience in grant writing. And a lot of these grants, from what I found out, is also tied to a certain, like USA football is tied to field turf. The one for the soccer, Safe Places to Play, is AstroTurf, and the USA football they're going to open the grant May 1st, so we couldn't even look to apply till May 1st. And a couple of the other soccer ones that we looked at. They were about a year before completion is when we're supposed to apply, but we thought maybe we could just investigate these, see what's out there. What I was told was our seams in our football field are starting to tear, starting to rip, and when the seams start to go, you really can't fix them. And Greg Trout could talk more on that, but I was told probably one more school year. So, just based on that, just what people have told me, we'd probably be looking at a year from now, with this project. And I just thought I'd see what's out there.
Mike, since we're not accepting a grant, or we're not authorizing a grant to be submitted for, I think we could unilaterally authorize Greg to do a survey, figure out what's possible, and bring it back to the committees.
if the committee's okay with it, I'm fine with it. I just want to make sure the public understands and the committee understands. Am I sitting here right now advocating for a new field this year? Absolutely not. Am I advocating that Greg uses his time with his team wisely, seek funding opportunities to see what's out there? I am. But again, I'll defer to the committee. If the committee's okay with it, then I'm okay with it. But I wanted to clarify that, sir.
May I ask I forget what we're indicating that a new turf might cost.
Greg and Greg Child or Greg Lozana, can you speak to that?
There's a figure that I've heard, and there's been no estimate, but just to replace what we have at the stadium would be probably around $350,000. Is that what you're hearing, Greg Trout?
I was hearing a little bit less. It all depends on which company we would like to go with, and a lot of that is reflect on we're not going to be changing any of the underneath structure,
Right.
like all the gravel, all the drainage, all that will stay the same. So it would be the removal of the, I'll call it carpet and the crumb rubber and laying down a new one, and that it all would depend on which company would go with. There seemed like there were a couple other newer companies out that weren't there before. But that also worries me because it would be nice to hang on to one that's been around for quite a while.
Greg Trout, when you say a little bit less, can you give the committee a number what that would be so they're aware?
I really don't know. It was phrased a little bit less than 300,000. They did not elaborate on how much less.
Or do the grants stipulate how much you can ask for?
No,
This USA grant?
The football grant is a $50,000 grant. Again, you'd have to go with Field Turf, that particular company. The one soccer grant for it goes with AstroTurf. Their grant is for 5% of the turf product and the installation. And Keystone Turf is another soccer grant. Their grant is up to 17.5% of the synthetic materials, is what I have found out so far, researching them on the internet. Field Turf has a webinar April 9th at 2:00, and Scott Shirley is going to register and just attend that seminar just to see what they have to say.
Does the pricing that you're sort of sketching out, does that include installation, or is that as our labor cost to install it additional?
You know what, I don't have an actual, didn't get an actual estimate, but those prices that I threw out, I think that's a total complete job, installation, everything.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any objection? I don't see any objection to having Greg explore this more fully and make some recommendations back to the committees.
Well, I think it could be. I think we can explore it, but I also think that the percentage that any of these companies are offering towards the actual materials is pretty low. So
yeah,
there's a pretty serious cost associated with the remainder of the materials plus whatever the installation is. And I think we need to think long and hard as to whether or not that's something we can do with the budget the way it is and the costs that we currently are incurring and could possibly see in the future.
Yes, but the only thing he's asking for permission is to do the exploration at this point.
Yeah, but my concern is that, I agree with Uta that I don't mind exploring it. I think it's always good to have an understanding in our hip pocket about what we might be up against from the budget. But I just do not want to create an impression with our school community that we're about to replace this turf. And I know we've said that, but I think it's very important for Mr. Lazanik and Mr. Trout and whomever and Mike and Mr. Vukovic to say no. It's not necessarily in the lineup right now because it's a lot of money as we're going into an increasingly precarious financial situation in the state, and of course naturally across the country. Yeah. So my feeling is, I'm okay to explore it, but it would be a tough sell for me where we're going to come up with the rest of that money to replace the turf in the near future.
Yeah, Julie, I agree on that. So I expect Greg should be working on the cost of patching the roof and see if that's even possible.
Wait, the roof? Oh, you mean, okay, you're talking about these.
Yeah, to do some kind of patchwork on it to try to buy another year or two.
I think the Madam Vice President, Mr. Harley's right. I think let's see what we can do to get another year, but let's start the work now to see if there's any other funding sources out there. Depending where we're at financially, what's going on with the pandemic, I don't think we need to fight on multiple fronts. We can't even get our East Pike entryway going, let alone do a classroom, let alone do a roof, let alone do a football field. Let's do one thing at a time, see where we come in. Respectfully, that's my recommendation, and give Greg and his team time, a year or so, to see what they can come up with other funding. And you're right, Mr. Harley, it has been talked about. It's been talked about since I've been here, but I don't think there's a need to rush. I think there's a need for them to go search, see what's out there, and then we can bring back those, like you said, those recommendations to this board and/or committee, if that's okay.
Okay.
Sir.
Yes, can we move on?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Well, this is Walter, Tom. Just one thing. When the turf was originally put in, it was put in with some donations and naming rights. And I think one of the things we need to do when we get to the point where we do have to make a decision on the turf is to look at exploring those as well. Obviously, any grants that Greg might be able to come up with will certainly help in that process. But I also think we need to look at several other alternatives rather than simply relying on the taxpayer.
Okay, that's a good point, Walter.
Tom, you're going to make this motion tonight? Is this a motion to go forward at the board meeting?
Does it? I don't think it needs to be a motion, does it, Mike?
No, I don't believe. I'm double checking the agenda now. I don't believe it's on there. The only reason we would put it on as motion, it's just me being me. I know the board values transparency. I know the board values that open communication. It's not on there. Tonight's goal was just to have a conversation. And if you want, you could take a week to think about it. We can always put on the following one. Again, does it need to be on there? No. Our local practice has been to seek permission for writing any grant. So I'd like to continue that. If you tell me no, I know it's me being a little overkill, a little overboard, but I kind of like that. So everyone knows where we're operating. Everyone knows the conversation, and there's nothing really just thrown up at the last minute. That's just me.
I don't have
my
any.
concern is that we say, Tom and Mike, that this doesn't, I mean, I think it has to be very clearly stated 3 times. I think Walter would agree as well that this doesn't mean the turf is going to be replaced just because we get a grant. I think, was it Uta that said something about a condition? So I'm very concerned that people say, we need a lot of other things, are we even going to have athletics in the fall because of the pandemic? So I'm concerned that this gets out of hand, and I think we have to handle this appropriately relative to our budget problems right now.
Well, Greg's not asking permission to write a grant. He's asking permission to explore writing a grant. So I think it's premature, Mike, to bring it to the board. Let Greg and his group bring something real back that we can move forward with.
Okay.
Okay. Is that okay, Julia? Or do you want to take it to the board?
Yeah, I was just concerned about what was going on with the motion, because typically if he's going to apply for something, we bring it in front of the board. Mike's right. That's our precedent.
Yeah, but he's not applying for anything.
We don't need right now, with everything we're going through, to be bringing that subject up. I think everybody and their brother knows that the turf had a life to it and it's running out. But the difference between saying and actually replacing is probably close. For all we know, it could be 400,000, not 350. I don't know, but I'm concerned. So if it doesn't have to go out in a motion, I think that's probably better.
Yeah, I don't. Again, I don't think it does. Mike, are you okay with that? Let Greg bring something back real.
Yeah, I think, to Madam Vice President, everyone's point, let Greg find out if even worthwhile writing the grant first. And that's all his intention was by emailing me was, hey, it's out there. Let's talk about it. So yeah, I think let Greg go find out what he can find out. His next meeting, I think he says April 9th. We can always bring it back to committee or board level and go from there. But I would like it vetted through the board so everyone knows what we're doing. Because I think our words matter and our actions matter. So I think that makes appropriate sense. And I'm fine with that if everyone else is okay with that.
Excuse me. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, Josie.
Having been an opponent to the turf in the first place, you had better be prepared. Julia is very, very, very accurate on the fact that it is going to raise grave concerns within the community. So I think your wording and however you do this had better be very, very well thought out. And that is a word of caution, because the turf has been a red herring and it will be again. So I think that's something you have to take into consideration very seriously.
I think that's a good point, Josie. The other point to make, Mike, is I doubt that we can do a single source replacement without taking multiple bids. So have Greg be aware of how we have to acquire construction bids when he's looking at these grants.
Okay. Okay.
So I have a question or a comment. When Greg is doing the research, one of the things that I think really needs to be looked at hard is, if we were to be awarded the grant, what kind of a time frame is associated with us using the grant money? Because that needs to be flexible too, for a couple reasons. We don't know what's going to happen in the fall, or even a year from now. We don't know what the financial situation of the board or the district is going to be. And if we're required to spend that money within a very short length of time, we're not going to be able to do it, and that will be a lot of work wasted. So I think that needs to be one of the primary considerations.
Yeah, I think Ms. Cinda's right. I think that's the point of the meeting on the 9th. And I'm hoping Greg would address that on the 9th, because logic would say that's what they're going to address then, but I think that's a valid point.
Oh, Mr. Terry, comment, are we getting the cart in front of the horse a little bit, I guess? And I know that we're not applying for the grant yet, but should we first determine whether we want to put turf back in, and then base that on facts of injuries?
And Mr. Harley, here's what I can add in. Maybe April 9th is this week. Give Greg some time to look into it, and then we can bring this back to buildings and grounds and keep it at all meetings, because the audit and finance is going to have to weigh in. Academics is going to weigh in. So rather than having this discussion tonight, what if we continue to have it on, I'd say all three of those committee meetings in some level, in some way, so we all know where we stand, because I think communication across the committees are going to have to happen, occur anyways.
That certainly makes sense. And tonight we don't have any real data. We just have possibilities. So in a week or 2 weeks, we'll have more focus.
So if it's okay with you, Mr. Kerr, I'll ask that Jared and Greg put this on as a standing item to talk about their findings as well, and let that committee discuss your option that you mentioned as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks.
Can we move on?
Yeah, moving on to number 4. Number 4 doesn't belong on this committee, but we put it on there based on the board's discussions last week in deliberations, where we were talking about the East Pike entryway and the rebid results. I'm going to give the floor to Greg and Jared in a moment to see what exactly they can give you an overview of what came in, what the thoughts were, and have a discussion on that, and then decide the board at the regular meeting or in this committee can dictate and guide us on where you want to go with regards to this project. But let's talk about the HVAC rebid results, and if it's okay with you, Mr. Harley, I'll turn it over to Greg and Jared.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. I sent the board an email, I believe, last Thursday with the results of the rebid for the HVAC system. We received one bid from, I know I'm going to say this wrong, Lagulia Mechanical out of Pittsburgh, with a base bid of $425,000. The alternate one, which was to put under the floor heating in the main lobby area of the new proposed new office at East Pike. To do that, the alternate was an add of $85,000. And then we also had an alternate for a deduct to, I think, revise some of the controls on the 2 units for a deduct of $40,000. Now, we did also, there was one other contractor who came late that day. He came about 1:30. His local construction exchange house gave him the wrong time. I did double check. All the information that we sent out about the times was correct. According to AI, there was about 4 contractors who picked up bid documents for this project. But again, we only had at this point 1 who made it on time, and the second one was not there. So 2 companies did pick them up. They just chose not to bid. Just to remind the board, the original bids that came in back in March, I believe, or February, I believe. We had 2 bids then as well for the original system that was proposed. And the low bid on that original bid was $247,788. At this point, the 3 other main contractors, the plumbing, the electrical, and the GC, have all been awarded. We do have contracts signed by the other contractors, just not signed by the district yet. We are just waiting on the board's direction as to how you would like to proceed. Greg, do you have anything?
The only thing that I would add would be we have contacted the contractors and they are willing to start if the board has decided to let them proceed.
So this is Tamara. Am I understanding it correct? We only have a bid from 1 contractor.
Unbelievable.
For the rebid. The other 2 bids, or if the board so chooses, you could still go back to the other 2 original bids if you wanted to. But for the rebid, right now we only have 1 valid bid.
So and the rebid includes those changes? Is that the difference?
The rebid includes the new system that was designed based on the board's feedback.
So would the 2 previous bids, contractors that submitted bids, be able to do those changes that we requested?
No.
Okay.
They probably would through a change order, Mrs. Terry.
Okay. I guess I'm just always leery about doing anything with just 1 bid. But I don't know if Terry or somebody or Greg or Jared, who knows more about this than I do, thinks they're comparable when you consider the 2 previous bids that we received.
I mean, the new bid is certainly not comparable to the 2 previous ones we had because it's a completely redesigned system. So right now, the 1 bid we have on the rebid is pretty much, I mean, that's the information we have. I can tell you, I talked to the other guy, the other company who came in. He is currently right now the lowest bid for the original system that was bid out. And he also confirmed that his bid base bid for the original system was also higher than what his bid was for the original system.
So Jared, are you telling the committee that when we went out and rebid this, the cost came back higher than the original plan?
Yes.
Almost double.
So the committee has to decide, do you want to go with the original plan? Or now do you want to follow through on the new proposal or do nothing? But I'd just be cautious as you keep talking about the need to be frugal and cost effective. We spent $15,000 to have that report come in and only get redesigned, tell us it's going to cost even more to run. I'd just be careful how many times we continue to do that. But again, I'll defer to the board. I'm not an architect. I'm just concerned about the cost coming in with these changes. But Jared, Greg, is there anything you want to add to that?
The only thing I want to add is like Mr. Trout mentioned, he did check with the other contractors. They are all willing to start the project as soon as they receive signed contracts back. I also did double check with our school solicitor, who, according to information coming out of PDE in the state, is the district is eligible to continue this project and to move it forward because of the safety aspect. It is considered an essential project. I know not all projects in the state are able to continue right now, but according to our solicitor and information that we were receiving from PDE and PSBA and PASA, this project would qualify for the eligibility to move forward if the board so chooses to do that.
So I have a question for Terry. Can you all, or somebody, can you briefly refresh my memory on what the difference is between the two options that we're talking about?
I'm going to defer that to Tom.
I'm so baffled with this. We have one bid that doubled the price. The cost is almost $50,000 a ton. It should be $7,000 or $8,000 or $10,000 a ton at most. The bidding was difficult, impossible for our local contractors. They had to drive to Pittsburgh to pick up the drawings. The machines that were specified are custom machinery. And you saw what happened. We had one bid, one legitimate bid, and one bid that came in late that you opened that turned out to be almost $100,000 lower than this bid. There's really no option. If we're moving forward, we have to go with the original plan. I'm a little concerned that you're not getting the right information from PDE and the solicitor. The governor issued a statement that the Pennsylvania Code Council interpreted that no new projects would be started except for emergencies, and that they would not be reviewing projects. They would not be reviewing new projects. Now, when I say that, that's coming from the code people, not from the attorneys, and I'm sure that there's several waivers we can apply for. I'm not sure that we should go through with this project at all at this point. The inability of getting product, of getting workmen there, it just seems like a huge hill to climb to get a project built today. And if we don't get a permit, there's really no reason to move ahead. So I'm not sure what Terry Lichtenfeld is going to do. He's been told by his code group not to process any new permitting. That isn't emergency life essential. So the waiver would have to be granted to do this project. And according to PDE, that's automatic, which is counter to what we were being told by what the code officials are telling me. So it just doesn't make sense. This is way out of line. So I guess first off, going with the rebid of the HVAC system is absolutely insane. Going with the original bid and the project at this and the condition we're in right now, I'm not sure it makes any sense either.
Can somebody tell me what the financial and possible legal ramifications are of just saying, no, that's it, we're not doing it?
The contracts have not been signed. And I don't believe that we have any obligation to go any farther. And correct me, Mike or Jared, if that's a misinterpretation, but I believe we have the ability to walk away from the project and when the things settle down, bring it back on the table.
I believe that's what Ron.
According to the solicitor, I mean, we can. Yeah, according to the solicitor, we can walk away at this point. I mean, we have spent. I mean, the financial ramifications at this point is we're probably about $170,000 into the design of this project.
But we can rebid this thing in a year using the same set of drawings. So we haven't lost, that money's not lost. We're not abandoning the project. We're just abandoning, if we walk away now, we just put it on hold for till next January.
So I have a question. Just because of all the problems with the failed Ben Franklin, do we have and own a set of these drawings? So if we do want to put this on hold and go out to bid, can we do that with another firm if we want to? I mean, we've paid for the drawings. Are they ours?
No, the drawings aren't ours. The drawings belong to the architects. We would have to negotiate a cost of use of those drawings. And again, please feel free to confirm this with the solicitor, but that would be standard operating procedure.
So so we paid $100 and some $1,000. What was that money for?
That was for their work to produce a set of drawings that would produce a building. But they still own the drawings. We can't take the drawings and hand them to somebody else with this architect's seal on them.
So if that $100 and whatever $1,000 we paid for these drawings, is that all we pay? Do they also get a percentage of the cost of the project?
No.
Okay.
Jared, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but we pay up through work performed.
No, you're right, Mr. Harley. It was a set fee the whole way through the construction process.
Yeah. So we didn't go to construction. We went to bid in the phasing. So we would owe them through bidding, and that would be it.
This is Terry. There's a couple of things. There's always a risk of putting design drawings on the shelf for a period of time because then codes could change. And then before going to bid, whether it's a year from now or 2 years from now, then you have to pay to revise those drawings to go to bid again. So I'm wondering, if we have to ask for a waiver, that's one option. Because this is a security related project, may allow us to move forward. My question is, if we went with the first HVAC bid, is there any way that we could do a change order to revise the system? And
yes, we can always do a change order working with the contractor to tune the system. For instance, taking $40,000 of controls off the system would be possible. Taking off the reheats would be possible. When I say that, though, we're unlikely to get the full retail value for those changes.
Right. So I have a question. Considering that, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Terry.
Let me finish this. Is that, I guess the question is going with the first bid, doing change orders to tweak it, is that a better option than going with the second one that gives us the changes?
Yeah, but the second one, we gotta take 50% of it out. It's not possible. The second one knew that there was limited bidders and put a price in to match.
So we're better off going with the first bid and making changes to it.
I would think so.
This is Walter. So I'm sitting here listening to this, and first of all, I share Tom's frustration and really puzzlement as to how this came in at this cost. I'm absolutely baffled by it. But the real question is, when I'm wearing my president's hat here, is whether or not to go forward with this thing or not. And I really think that's a board decision. And so I'm going to suggest that, Tom, there were some additional questions that you were raising about where the code officials might be and so on like that. I'm wondering whether or not we shouldn't put a motion on for our meeting on the 9th and then just let the board as a whole hash this thing out as to whether to proceed with this thing at this point in time or whether to shelve the drawings as you're suggesting. That would also give Jared some time to check with Terry Lingenfelder and find out what if there is a difference or a waiver or whatever we might need to do to move this forward should the board decide to do that.
That certainly makes sense, Walter. And it should be a board decision. No question about it.
Mike, are you okay with that?
Yeah, it's whatever we're here to do whatever the board likes. We're just trying to get these items that you asked us to get on the agenda done, and we'll run it at pace wherever the board feels most comfortable.
So I think that's what we need to do is Mike, you and Jared figure out how they best work out that difference with the code officials versus what you're hearing from PDE, and then come back to us at the next board meeting on the 9th or whatever that I guess it's not the 9th, it'd be the 13th.
Yes, sir.
And then we'll put it on the agenda. And I think it just really has to be a relatively simple motion. Does the board wish to proceed with the project? Yay or nay, and then if so, to accept the original HVAC system.
Okay.
Walter, before you go from this, before we leave this subject, I just texted Terry Lichtenfelder, who's the building inspector. And he says, yes, we can review the plans and get everything ready. If you apply for and get a DCED waiver, work can then start. So it is possible. He's going to send me the link to ask for the waiver, and I'll forward it to Jared.
Sounds good on my end.
Moving on.
Jared, I think the next one's yours, sir. I don't know if there's a need to discuss it or not, but I think you have it on there.
Yeah, the bids for the life skills chairlift project came in at the beginning of March. I sent the board an email with the total for those, broken down by the different
I think you froze, Mr. Harlow.
The cost is coming in around $256,240. At this point, it's up to the board. Again, another project as to whether you want to move forward with it at this point. We could also, if the board so chooses, apply for a waiver for that as well, due to the need for the chairlift needing replaced for our students. Or it could be something that even construction itself could be held off until later in the summer. I think the main concern for the contractors and for the architect is getting the chairlift equipment ordered, not something that needs to start construction right now during the pandemic itself, but getting that equipment ordered as soon as possible would help the project hopefully be completed over summer. Right now, the contractors were told they wouldn't be able to get in until June 3rd. So that's kind of what they based their bids on and were planning on, because that was originally the first day after the last day of school when students would be out of the building. So we do have some time. And again, it's really just that chairlift is what is kind of the major piece of equipment that needs ordered for this project. Greg, anything you want to add?
Jared, before you go to Greg, would you give us the total number again? You cut out on me right there.
Yep. The total number is $256,240.
And that's for both projects.
Yes.
Do you have a breakdown for each individual project?
Not between, I have it in between prime contracts, but not in between the individual projects. It's not between the life skills and the chairlift. They were not broken out that way.
Okay.
Those are both jobs that can only be done when the students are not in session. Mainly, I would say the chairlift definitely, because we do have students that do use that on a daily basis. And now the other life skill, we could probably do that when during it's going to be a little noisier. We could even have them, you pay a premium to have them do basically a second shift. Or something like that could be done if it was needed, but was not bid that way too.
Is there any other comments on this project?
Thomas, Terry, we discussed this some, previously, and I think that the board, during recent discussions, were all thoroughly on board that both these projects are valuable to the students, and the lift is actually probably a good safety upgrade. So I'd like to move these projects forward.
Okay, it is on the agenda for the meeting tonight. I think we can move on, Mike.
Okay. Mr. Heinrich and Mr. McElwain, I'd like to speak about the AP exam requirements and how that impacts our local admin regulations. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Heinrich and Mr. McElwain.
And I will turn it over to Mr. McElwain. Go ahead. Wait.
Thank you, Mr. Heinrich. Thank you, everybody, for providing the opportunity to speak this evening. We were contacted by AP, the College Board, and was informed that there would be changes to the AP testing this year. Instead of the traditional exams at the end of the year, the sit-down, paper, pencil, in light of coronavirus and all the effects and impacts it's had on all the schools and school years of students, they're moving the AP exam to online instead, given that it's a big change in what our students are expecting, as well as the changes that have occurred to them during their academic school year. We are looking at making the test optional for them. Currently in our handbook, it has that taking the AP exam is a requirement. But given the changes in instruction, given the changes in learning and of course the school year, we are asking that the students who do not want to take the exam as such, already allowed by AP to be exempted from that and exempted from the requirement. They are required, in fact, to take that test. The students who would be taking the test, there's enough incentive already for those students to take that test, given waivers of enrollment in college courses as well as financial considerations. But we, at this time, do not recommend that all students are required to take it because, like I said, it has been a change to their academic school year and the expectations of taking the test.
So to summarize that real quick, we're going to grant waiting for all students who took the AP classes and finished them, even if they do not take the AP exam, which would be the big change here. Is that correct, Wade?
That is correct, Mr. Heinrich. And that was, yes, thank you for reminding that second part of this is that students would still maintain their weighted grades in the courses in which they are enrolled.
Yeah, we think this is the best course of action given the situation. The students entered into this process in good faith. They signed up to take the test in good faith. Now that the College Board has changed the requirements, we think it's only fair to offer them, to extend that offer to them to get out of the test if they don't feel that they're going to be prepared enough given the situation. We just wanted to bring it to your attention because it is in the handbook and the board approves the handbook. So we wanted to make sure you were aware of what was happening and get your approval.
So Rob, and you may not know this is Uda. There's a financial cost, obviously, to taking the AP exam. How does the change of the format of the exam affect any students who are choosing not to take the exam and the refund?
My understanding is the refund would come from us. We still have their money. The college board asks for our money at the end. So we will receive a refund for any money we give the college board, and the students, we would pass that refund on to the students.
Is it possible that this is a one-time deal until we figure out what's happening next year? That we waive the opportunity, we waive the requirement this year, but reserve the right to reinstate it for next year?
That is exactly our plan. Yes, sir.
Oh, that makes sense, Rob. Thank you. Anything else from the committee on this? How about the board?
Just one thing to add in, Mr. Harley, was also that although we can grant that waiver, the students would still, if they wanted credit from the college or university that they were applying into, they would still need to take the test if they wanted that credit. So that, what we're doing doesn't necessarily affect them in college. We're just trying to help kids that might need some help along the way.
Yeah, well, and they didn't get a full academic year on this course in the classroom, so they're going to have some missing knowledge. I can see people not wanting to take the test. At the same time, the only way to get the 4 is to take the test. So the kids will have a hard decision to make, but I don't think we should stand in their way. If they feel unprepared, then give them their money back and give them the grade and let them walk on.
Sir, if there's no objections from the board, then we will write up an agenda item for next week and put it on the meeting for the board to approve.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vukovic?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harley, the rest of items that we have to go over are non-agenda items. So we'll go over those and allow some conversation or any questions that you may have. Number one, our continuity of education plan. It's up and running. The first week went incredibly well. I'm very appreciative of all the hard work of the teachers, the administration, but also the families being flexible with us as we overwhelmed them with a lot of information. And we knew we were going to do that, sir, because it's a big rollout, and we're appreciative of the responses that we've gotten back so far. There's going to be gradual and frequently communication to families about updating. Rob's going to work on one that we're going to send out tomorrow with regards to grading, because again, this is an equity issue where we don't want anyone to be punished or hurt by not being in school. So we're going to send some additional communications out to our families about what that looks like for the fourth 9 weeks. We made some changes to lengthen the time for kids to turn in late work for the third 9 weeks, so no one's hurt by that as well. So when you talk about being fair, flexible, and considerate and equitable, our actions up to this point have done such. So we're really proud of that so far. Again, there's some bumps in the road. We had some elementary families who were completely rather go paper packets than internet, and we're working with everyone we can based upon their need, based upon their desires and resources. So it's going really well. We're going to spend a couple of minutes having administrators and us talk to you about our stages of implementation. Our goal was to come out with, review and enrichment, teach new content, but really focus on enriching and reviewing those standards and building in a gradual release to our families where you see a more planned instructional approach taking place. But we wanted to start slow to go fast, as we usually say, and it's worked out for our families, because you talk about a big fundamental change for students, it's one for our families as well. So we're gradually stepping up. Our teachers done a nice job really having a gradual release of the work, getting it out in certain areas. The first day was the hardest because if you're in a middle school through high school, you may get 9 or 10 emails that day alone. So that first day was tough and overwhelming for families. And now we have a nice gradual release happening and occurring for everyone else. And it really seems to be going well. Some real good feedback, some bumps in the roads, but we're working through that. Rob, I'll turn it over to you and the rest of the principals and then you want to make the board aware of how we're doing with continuity of education plan at this point.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Just to clarify, the communication that's going out very soon, if not tonight, first thing tomorrow, is about communication, getting parents signed up for Power School, kind of apologizing for inundating them with emails, ironically with another email. and then explaining to them why what our purpose is moving forward with communication. The one on grading probably won't be released until Wednesday or Thursday of this week, because there are 2 more things that we have to iron out before we're ready to release that to the public. The biggest of which is, what are we doing for our students who are in college and high school classes? I'm working with Westmoreland Community College to iron that out, because we have some teachers they're going to have to follow our philosophy and our policy about grading, but simultaneously they're going to have to follow Westmoreland Community College's grading policy as well for those kids. And I just want to make sure that none of our children are become victims in this situation, and they're not denied any privilege or opportunity because of our shutdown or what we're doing to be fair and equitable to all of our students. So once we have that ironed out, we'll send out that communication to parents. And then one more communication we're going to send out probably right after Easter is Mr. Johnson and Mr. McElhaney are working hard on the graduation requirements and the what graduation and prom and those senior experiences could look like. And we're just going to, basically, keep parents in the loop that, look, we haven't forgot about you. We know this is important to you. We know this is the most important year of your life. And, we're doing our best to come up with a plan that is both safe and memorable. So those are the communications that are going to come out of our office over the next week. As far as the plan is concerned, as Mr. Vukovic said, everything went, pretty well. All things considered, Randy and his team did a fantastic job getting technology into the hands of people. The principals did an excellent job leading the teachers through their virtual Act 80 days, which was scary because, our tech knowledge ranges from, could fly a space shuttle from their computer to can barely turn their computer on among the teachers. And, we had to make training that made sense for all of those people. And I think we did a pretty good job with all that. And, the teachers did a great job getting the kids engaged and reaching out. The counselors, the nurses, everybody was on the phone or, on Google Meets trying to engage the families. And, I think we got really one complaint that was a valid complaint from 3,000 families. So I think that speaks for itself. Justin, anything you wanted to add? Or?
No, thanks. I think you hit it.
Mr. Harley will make notice before we turn over to the principals if they want to give any input. We did make a portion of the website dedicated to our continuity of education plan, so families can even go there, submit a ticket to get tech support and tech help. So we made it as accessible and realistic and feasible as we possibly can. And we put, at this point, our motto was we have to choose compassion over compliance. We want to be there for our families to address any issues and hurdles they may have. And I think we've done that. Now, it doesn't mean the work is easy or they don't have anything to do. It just means there's going to be bumps along the way, and we've built in some safety nets for our families and our kids in order to get that done. So with that, is there any principals like to add any input regarding the first week so far?
I can jump in, Mike. This is Mike Minnick.
Please go ahead.
So I just want to acknowledge the junior high team. They've been working so diligently to come together and work by grade level teams within each department. They've been providing content out to our students initially with the enrich and review mindset. But they're eager to engage students. They've been working tirelessly to make contact with the students' families, either through their Google Classrooms or through the learning package, which they've assembled, and they're continuing to evolve. Marilyn's been great working with the teachers, helping assemble those packets so that they're meaningful and giving them bite-sized pieces so as not to overwhelm families with a tremendous amount of content right out of the gate. So I'm happy with how eager our teachers are to get to work and to engage our students while being mindful of not overwhelming our kids.
Thank you, Dr. Minnick. I'd like to also add, Mr. Vukovic, echo some of the comments that Dr. Minnick had made, but also I'd like to say on behalf of the senior high school, our faculty and staff have been highly professional. They are problem solving and they're very purposeful with what they're doing. And we are very proud of their efforts. Thank you.
There's no other comments at this point, Mr. Harley. Move on. I'll defer. Is there any other comments, final comments from the principals? Dawn?
Yeah, so just wanted to let you know what Kelly and I had done on the primary level. So we brought all the kindergarten teachers together. They rolled out the content for the entire district's kindergarten population, and that was done at the same for every grade level. So they kind of used the team concept. So right now, teachers are just interacting with family members, with students, answering questions, helping them get on. Certainly, this is not the ideal learning atmosphere for a 5 or 6 year old, but they are doing an outstanding job in supporting all of our learners currently. So great job to all the teachers who've been working hard to make this this work.
Okay. All right. If it's okay with you, Mr. Harley, I'll move on to item number 2. If I don't hear anything else.
Absolutely.
I want to debrief the board. I previously spoke to the board about the idea of social worker interns. I had a contact at Pitt, scheduled a meeting for myself, the rest of administration, and guidance counselors. And we had a virtual conversation with Dr. Andrews on March 24th. He is looking into feasibility and possibility of getting us 1 to 2 social worker interns for this upcoming school year. We do not, or are not required to pay them intern or stipend. I'm sorry, we don't have to pay a stipend, but I think a stipend would be greatly appreciated, not only by the university, but more importantly, the individual doing the internship. So here's where we're at. Our goal is to eventually get 4 to 6 in our district on an annual basis. We think after a conversation with the counselors and and Dr. Andrews that we could build a system that allows for interns to come in on a yearly basis and support our kids and be that extension and that family connector between school and the community and the resources available out there. We're thinking we can get 1 or 2 for the upcoming school year. And I just really want to run it by the committee, get the input. It's not a motion for now. It's something we could do in the future as we're going to continue the conversation and continue to develop this partnership out with Pitt. But I at least wanted to make the committee aware of it, that we have followed through in that conversation. We did involve stakeholders that include the guidance counselors, and everyone at this point finds a real benefit, how it can help them in their daily duties and daily job. When you look at a $2,000 stipend for the year, they'd be here for an academic year. I think it's well worth it. I think it's a smart investment. But again, there's no decision to be made now, other than that, are you at least interested in us pursuing this and moving forward? We do think there's a great community need. I've been telling you for 2 years, when you look at the change that we had in demographics from a 10% free and reduced lunch rate a decade ago to nearly 50%, that comes with some need for families, need for students that extend beyond the school year. And if we're looking at a comprehensive approach to sustaining our quality of life and improving that for those kids who need it, then I think I fully support this and recommend this. I'll turn it over to administrators who are part of the call as well, and they get an input, and then we'll take any questions from the committee. So at this point, I'll turn it over to the administrators. Go ahead. Mr. Zohorchak, do you want to start based on our conversation we had with Pitt Johnson? I'll turn over to Mr. Heinrich then as well about the benefits of this.
Yeah, for sure. So, when you look at the numbers, we did our screening, at least at Ben Franklin and Eisenhower. And based on that screener, we had upwards of 25% of our students that had, a need, whether it be through internalized behaviors like sadness, anxiety, and depression, or whether it be externalized behaviors. And so knowing that, when you have 25% of your student population that demonstrates a need, it is certainly tough. And when you ask teachers what they feel are the barriers to student success, they're going to tell you parent engagement, they're going to tell you student behaviors. And knowing that, I think that social work services could go such a long way in not just supporting student behaviors, but also supporting the parents that are that are also working to address these at home. So in my opinion, it's a no-brainer. I think that level of support is absolutely needed, as evidenced by the data that we have. So yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. And Pitt is their support, and the professor that we spoke to was more than happy to help in pretty much anything we needed. So again, I think it's a no-brainer.
I would agree with Mr. Zahorchak. It is. It's going to help our kids. It's going to help our families. It's going to help our guidance counselors. It's going to help our schools, and it's going to help us try this on and see if social services is something we want to pursue down the road in any number of forms. So I think it's something we need to explore.
I'd like to point out that is this a full-time person, or is that how often would an intern be here?
They'd be here 5 days a week. I think they're limiting their hours to I don't know if you said 30 or 40 hours. They'd be here full again the entire week, the entire school year, and they have a certain hour requirement that they would be limited to. But it was nothing that we found was not
Yeah, this is at a $2,000 stipend, Mike. That's like $1.10 an hour for some professional quality help. Lord knows our students and our families could use that help.
Agreed. We that's why I allowed everyone to speak to it. We were involved in the meeting, and I think it has good potential. Again, there's no need to take any action tonight because we don't even have an MOU in place. We're still just at this point just making you aware of it and making sure we have support from the committee and the board to move forward and continue these conversations because we think it makes sense for us.
Well, I certainly support it. Uta, are you still?
Yeah, I'm still here. I like this idea. I would like to see if we can have a conversation about can they do some of this virtually or online if needed. I'd hate to set this up and then run into a similar situation that we're currently in and have those services have to stop.
Yeah, I think Valerie brings up a great point. Harley. I did not look into that, but I can definitely follow up.
Very good, Mike. I think the committee will support this moving ahead.
I think.
Oh, Tamara, please.
Will the same social work student be there all year, or will it be per semester?
My understanding is it'd be the same person for the whole year, but then every year it would switch from there on out. So we would have to be systematic in the way we build a system that plans for that. So my understanding, and administrators correct me if I'm wrong, who were on the call, my understanding it is the same person for a whole entire year. They also do like a summer or shorter type of internship that they can make available. It's over summer to us as well. But in the case for the year long, it would be September through June is my understanding.
Okay, great. I think that continuity for at least one school year is important. And again, kudos to administration for thinking outside the box. I think I brought up social workers supporting our students a year or so ago. So I'm glad that action has been taken and we're moving in the right direction. Thank you.
And it seems like the right thing to do. Like when we just, the one issue we may run into is there may not be enough services out in the community that meet all the needs of our kids. But until we go down, do a resource assessment, find out what we have, make families aware of it, we can't get any better. And a lot of time we put a lot of intervention and support into our kids, and rightfully so. But we need to provide our families with support. And I think they can do that, to your point, Ms. Leeper.
Right, and I think this may also free up some of our time, some of our staff time, so they can be serving the students in different ways. So I think it sounds like a win-win.
I'd also like to point out that we're likely to be a much higher percentage when we go into fall of families that need this kind of help.
I agree. Is there any other comments regarding social workers? Any other questions that you want us to address, the interns?
I think you can move on, Mike.
Okay. Just want to have a conversation about the board, about our support at the 4-5 level in the area of literacy. Our goal is not to scare anyone or hurt anyone. Our goal is to be transparent, where we came to you last month and you graciously approved the creation of a position for an MTSS facilitator to 4-5 level. Considering the pandemic and considering the struggles we may go through financially, you don't have to do anything tonight other than think about this and make sure you're still comfortable with us moving forward with the position. Does the administration think it's necessary? We absolutely do. Do we think it can help kids? We absolutely do. But one thing you constantly ask us is to be, fiscally responsible with the monies we have available. This is one we could, if needed to be, do without. And I only say that because we haven't had one in place yet. Do I think we need it? Do I think it's in the best interest of kids? I do. I would say at this point, you continue to think about your thoughts with that. We can go through and do the interview process, and before we hire or mislead anyone that we're going to hire them, we just have another conversation down the road as to whether or not you want to fill that position. I think my administration has done an incredible job saving costs over the last few years. I think to the point where it's quite extraordinary, considering some of the financial hurdles we had with the reassessment that we got us through and everything else. I think we're in a good spot. However, I'd remiss if I'd at least come forward and say, we want this position, but this is one, if you're looking to save, we could do. I was very upfront with the association president and administrators when I said that. And again, I'm not telling you to make a decision. I think at this point, we still should go through hiring. I think we should still go through that process, because where I don't believe the logic coming across the nation is, I think this impact of school closure could have a greater impact than just 1 year. I think this may be felt for years academically, that we have to be cognizant of and just keep in the back of our mind. So again, I do not say we cut the position now unless the board so chooses, but I at least want to bring it up to this committee's decision. We'll also discuss it next week as well. So basically at this point, it's nothing more than just making you aware of the possibility.
Mike, would this position start this coming September?
Yes, ma'am. That's our intention. Yes, ma'am.
And you haven't begun the interview process yet?
No, ma'am. What we did was we had 12 retirements for replacing 10 positions. This is one of the 10 or 11. I can't remember off the top of my head. So I think it's 11. I'm sorry. So I think we're -1. We posted the position. The posting goes down on Thursday. I'm sorry, Friday. Good Friday. The posting's over, ma'am. Then after that, we would start the screening process and start conducting interviews. Under this current schedule, we would not bring anything forward till late May, early June, as we stand anyways. But I didn't want this to be a surprise. I wanted this to be upfront where, just where our thinking is, their options are.
Thank you. I think it's pretty crucial. I guess we'll have to wait and see how things go, but I think it's crucial, and I want to support it if it's a priority personally.
And Madam Vice President, I could agree with you more. This is where this job's tough. You got a financial side of things, right? We're all scared about, we're all concerned about. I'm also equally concerned, if not more so, the academic impact not having our teachers or not having our kids in front of our teachers are going to have. So people worry about summer drain. I'm scared about this whole spring and summer drain. Now our teachers are working like heck to mitigate that, and I'm proud of the work they're doing, and we're going to try to provide some programming over summer. But I just at least want to bring up to your radar. If we had our wishes, we keep it. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't tell you that that's an option. So nothing more than that, Madam Vice President. I think your words are well stated.
I think we can move on, Mike.
Okay. This one is just something I need some direction from the board, and it really, I mean, I guess you could say it has an impact here, or I could save it till next week or until the buildings and grounds if you want to think about it. I am getting reports that our playgrounds are still being used by the community, and I understand the impact that has and what a great asset that is for the community. But when you talk about the pandemic, social distancing expectations, do you want us to place signs up there closing them? When you look at a lot of state parks, they're closed. It's really up to you what you want to do in that area. And maybe you can think about it. We can bring it back to next committee. But I am just a little concerned, just what your thoughts are on this item. But, God forbid, you need that physical exercise and you need some recess. I just, I don't know if it should be on our school grounds. I want to be clear. We're not cleaning the playgrounds. We clean the schools. But to say we're going out there and cleaning the playgrounds every day is just inaccurate. So, Greg, is there anything you want to add to that from your research? I asked Greg to look into this to see what other schools are doing or what the governor edict was. And I don't want to speak for Greg, but my thought was I thought they all were to be closed. But Greg, I'll defer to you, Mr. Trout.
Yes, I checked around, and there are some city and county parks and state parks that have definitely closed. Some of the ones that locally, if you want to say locally, the Pittsburgh schools, they've closed theirs. Homer City, I know, closed theirs partially, or I shouldn't say partially, put things around it. Marion Center, they closed the gate to where the walking track would be. Somebody can still walk all the way up to get to the walking track, but there's a climb. And I do know that State College School District closed all of their facilities. West Shore, Tioga, Hatboro, all Philadelphia School, Boyertown, Montgomery County, Lancaster County, Nazareth Area School District, Avonmore. Those are the ones that came up when we were looking online. And there was one, for some reason, I can't remember for sure which one in Pittsburgh. I think it was North Allegheny that closed theirs. It was on the news there last week.
I think that, you know, with the state of everything and the unknowns and the new information coming out that came out, I don't know, a couple days ago, that we should all be wearing masks now when we're outside. I don't think that we can be too safe at this point in time. And again, we're not the medical experts, but if state facilities are closed and other parks, I think that it's probably a good idea that we do the same.
If we have a direction that we're supposed to have our district closed and have to have all kinds of rules and regulations about which employees can work and, you know, how close they can be, we should not allow the playgrounds to be open. We need to be absolutely strict on this as much as we can to try to stop this and not endanger kids.
I think on a practical note, though, Cinda, that all we can do is put a sign on it. We can't control. None of these playgrounds are lockable, from my recollection. Maybe one might be, but all this equipment exists in the world. So I think all we can do is really just put a sign up notifying people that it's not been cleaned and to not use it, but to have our maintenance staff enforce a no play zone seems also difficult.
Wouldn't the borough police? I'm sorry.
We got three schools that don't have borough police. Why would we close the walking track at the high school? Why, you know, just some of this doesn't make sense. But
Did we close the high school track?
No, that's what Greg said that one of them did. But that's what Mike's asking. Are we going to close our facilities? Now, some of, you know, that would be something that would be lockable. But you know, if you maintain social distance on that, can people still walk? Well, gosh, you know, it seems like a logical thing to do at this point for the next month. But on a practical note, we can't lock a gate on any of these playgrounds.
I'm not suggesting concertina wire and locking gates and, you know, having the police.
Yeah, no,
but I'm saying that we need to make it abundantly clear to the community and to the parents, to the students, that we do not think this is appropriate and that they need to stay away. They need to stay home.
Yeah, we certainly could put a sign on it saying these are not being, this equipment has not been sanitized. And to stay home or just stay off of it.
Well, I think Terry, what I've seen on the news is the most playgrounds they put yellow caution tape around them in addition to the signs.
Mm-hmm. Just to discourage it, but they're not arresting people that are using them.
But I think we need to be clear.
Well, I think we can certainly direct the administration to put the signs up and put the tape on and call it a job.
But I think the signs also need to say the playground is closed.
That's fine.
Yeah, I agree with that, Uta.
I agree also.
And if people abuse it, then I think the police will have to cite somebody. I do.
They're not coming out for those kind of things anymore. They've already announced that.
Yes, they will.
Okay.
So, Mr. Harley, we have support from the committee then to have Greg put up the parks, the playgrounds, parks, etc., are closed.
Well, I would limit it to the play equipment, not the grounds itself. Let people go out and throw a ball with each other and use the fields.
No, that's what they weren't allowed to do in New York. They were playing basketball and frisbee, and they're not allowed to do that because they're touching the same equipment. It's kind of serious, in my opinion.
Basketball, volleyball, tennis, anything where you're touching equipment that somebody else has touched is should not be done. And we should be very clear to the community and the students that we don't think they should do it. Maybe we can't have the police arrest them, but we cannot condone that.
I'm living in Poets Village with 3 kids, and you're telling me that I can't go across the creek and throw a ball with each other?
No, we're telling you can't do that on school grounds.
That's what I mean. I'm right there. That's like all of our schools.
If we want to flatten the curve, we have to enforce, we have to try to do this. I mean, it's for everybody's good in the long run. Short term, I mean, it's not forever. I think we should put the signs up and put the tape up.
Are you going to tape up all of Ben Franklin? Or are you just going to tape up the equipment?
What?
I think it's the equipment that's the biggest concern here.
But you don't know for sure. I think we just better.
No, we don't know for sure, but gosh. You're not going to allow a family to go. You're not going to allow a family to go to the Ben Franklin field.
Right now, they're asking us to wipe up our groceries when we bring them home. I bring home a carload of groceries every day. I mean, every 2 weeks. That's a lot of stuff to wipe off. I mean, there's sacrifices we all have to make.
Tammy, could you say that again? I couldn't hear you.
There was on the news that we have to wipe off our groceries when we get home. That's recommended. We wipe them off with a lightly moist cleansing cloth with household products, just the outside of the containers. I mean, if we're having to do that for our groceries, can we honestly say that we wouldn't want to do something like that for our kids, that we wouldn't block off the equipment just for a few weeks just so that they're safe?
Tammy, I'm agreeing that we can block off the equipment. I'm having trouble with blocking off the fields and closing the entire acreage.
Yeah, Tammy, that's, and Julia, that's where I'm coming from as well. Yes, you can wrap tape around the equipment. I agree that could be done very easily, but are we going to string tape around, how many acres is there?
Well, all the acreage isn't a playground, Walter.
No, but there's a ball diamond down there.
Well, baseball's using gloves and balls. I don't think we can play baseball. I don't mind if they walk over it, but
my point is that I don't know how, unless you essentially put up some sort of a fence or you take a bunch of 2x2s and drive in the ground and wrap tape around it, that you're going to block the whole building off. I mean,
no, I'm not suggesting that.
No, I think what Madam Vice President is saying is we could shut down the playground. They should be on the playground. The fields are one thing. I think the question the committee needs to discuss tonight, I think we got the message on playgrounds. We can handle that. But I do think the issue is, what do we do about the track at the high school? Because don't you need to open a gate to get in there? And that's where the danger of passing or having the virus stay on a surface issue. So I think Madam Vice President's right. Playgrounds, we got directions, right? We could shut the playgrounds down. If you're in the field, you're in the field, but at least you're not on equipment. That's what we don't want. But I would say, and this is just my opinion, I don't know if I'm right, Mr. Harley or Madam Vice President, what would you want to do about the high school where people use the track? And I think because of that gate being there, and Greg and Wade, maybe I'm wrong, but I think you have to use that to get in. And to Ms. Cinda's point, that's where on the surface, I think it could become tricky.
Well, I think people
correct. You have the turnstile at the high school, so, and that is something that is lockable. Have all the signs made tomorrow. Start to have them made. I can lock the turnstile, put a temporary sign on until we have more permanent ones made, and then we can post those around the playgrounds, and we can put caution tape around most of the playgrounds. Horace Mann, it's easier. We can just string it across the entryway, designating that the playground is not to be used. I'll come up with some verbiage. There are quite a few sign companies out there already that already has a plethora of languages for this already. It's amazing how fast that has developed and gone to print already. I'm surprised.
Has IUP shut down its track, Greg?
You know what? I was going to drive over and look at that, and I forgot.
The answer is yes. They have. They've been locked up for a couple of weeks now.
Thank you.
Did they close down the tennis courts and any other kinds of athletic, the baseball field, all of that?
Well, I'm not aware of the
No.
okay.
The tennis court is open. I run past there. That's the only reason I know.
Greg, is there a gate on the senior high track? And my only concern with shutting it down is there are a lot of people that go there to walk because of their knees and hips and other joints, and it's a soft surface to walk on. It helps them.
Mr. Kerr, there are approximately anywhere from 10 to 15 people who use the facility throughout the day at any given time. The turnstile can be locked and shut down. There is a gate admittance, or a gate that opens up at the one end of the track that would, limit anybody touching any of the turnstile or anything like that. We also have a number of people who walk here in the evening. I've been watching them the last couple of evenings. They do seem to be practicing social distancing. So if we were to keep it open, I would say open the gate. Because there's access to it anyway, 24/7, and that would cut down on any worries about social distancing.
That was my suggestion, was if there is a gate, then let's use it and then lock the turnstile.
Well, and Greg could put up a sign reminding about social distancing, and if we find that we have large groups, then we will shut it down. But give them a warning.
The open gate, if that's needed. I'm not sure if that's visible from the turnstile or not.
I personally would not recommend opening a gate. That will let a lot of potential abuse. Riding bicycles on there is not something that's recommended as far as from the track company themselves. They don't like anything that has wheels that can turn. So they've always recommended that. That's the one nice thing about the turnstile. It does keep that kind of traffic off of it.
That is true, Greg. We did have that vandalism a few months ago here on the property, turfing the fields.
Mr. Harley, it's 7:15 and we're over our time. The board meeting is supposed to start 15 minutes ago. Are you okay if we continue this conversation later, either in the regular meeting or at the next committee meeting? Or unless the board's ready to give me direction. I think there's 4 people waiting in the boardroom.
Okay, Mike, I think you can. I think you could bring this up at the board meeting, but I think what I'm hearing is put the tape around the equipment, and then see what we do to the high school and to the rest of the facilities.
Okay, Greg, I think you got the clarity you needed. We'll shut down the playgrounds. They will not have access to them. We'll put a sign up and also the caution tape around them, and then you'll work with Wade to develop a plan for the high school track and field that you think is suitable for the committee. If we want, we can always bring it back next week when we meet again.
Yes, that makes sense, Mike. Shall we sign off?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. We'll see you in a few moments.
So are we skipping exec session?
I believe so. Tamara?
I think she all left.